Welcome to another episode of Arbitration Life. I am Janette, Brin.
And I'm Hana Doumal.
So Hana, I recently read that the requirements of independence and impartiality serve the purpose of protecting the parties against arbitrators being influenced by factors other than those related to the merits of the case. When it comes to being a good arbitrator, or even the selection process, this is obviously something all arbitration practitioners worldwide have to be constantly mindful of. Considering what you have seen and learned over the years, I'm curious to know from you your thoughts about the industry.
Well, I think it is a fascinating topic, and I know there are a lot of doctorate and probably PhD theses on this subject. Well, independence is objective. It is about personal and professional relationships and also economical links, whereas impartiality is more subjective. And conceptually, this is very interesting. But in practice also, and I find it all the more interesting because arbitration is such a small world where everyone knows everyone, and yet some arbitrators, so the same arbitrators, are appointed again and again in situations where they should be challenged. And sometimes you would see actually parties challenging arbitrators in cases where there is no reason to, and those challenges obviously fail. But we should definitely get some more insight from today's guest.
Yeah.
So he is a law professor, as well as an independent arbitrator and mediator, specializing in commercial and investment disputes. Please welcome James Claxton.
So welcome, James, to Arbitration Life.
Welcome, James.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
I understand you are an arbitrator, a mediator, a law professor, and you previously worked as an attorney in private practice and at an arbitral institution. This is an impressive background. Do you have a favorite role or perspective? And how did all these experiences shape you as an arbitration practitioner?
Well, thank you. You're very kind to put it that way. It's very generous of you. I think that the range of experiences is really about, well, it's kind of a happy feature of international arbitration. I think our profession allows more flexibility than others to do different things. And I think it's not uncommon to do more than one thing. I think Hana is a great example of that. I wouldn't only want to teach. And I feel very fortunate that arbitration allows this diversity of experiences. These days, I particularly enjoy acting as mediator. It's kind of new to me, and I really like the nature of the work. There's more managing communications and more problem solving in real time, and I find that challenging and enjoyable. You asked about how has this shaped my experiences. I think that the experiences sort of feed each other. So I think it's useful to understand the different perspectives from actual experience. So I hope that I'm a better arbitrator because I worked as party counsel and as tribunal secretary. When I represent parties, I think I have a better sense of what's important and useful to arbitrators based on my experience as arbitrators. And I also hope that my appreciation of these different perspectives might help me to be a better teacher for students.
Thank you for that.
And to follow up on that, James, you are currently a law professor in Japan at Waseda University and Rikkyo University, a lecturer at Keio University, and also an adjunct faculty at the University of Miami. And you were previously a law professor at Kobe University. Why did you decide to become a law professor?
Well, I really actually began teaching when I was a law student. So once or twice a week for one semester, I gave introductory classes in law at Mission High School in San Francisco. And I think the only part of my class that interested the students was the part on criminal law. But ever since then, I've worked with students and I really like working with students. I moved to Japan in 2015. And I did that in order to help start an LLM program entirely in English in Kobe. I only planned to stay for a year. Now it's been about 6 years and I'm still here. I still enjoy teaching. In particular, I like the dynamic of exchanging ideas with curious and diverse students. I also like the teaching obligates me to keep up with current developments and to reread cases and articles that I'm sure that I would not reread or that I would forget otherwise. But what I've really come to enjoy lately is research and writing. And I think it's a privilege to have a platform to do this and to have the time to reflect on big policy issues and change.
Very true.
James, I absolutely love that you're big on education. You've trained arbitrators on case management techniques and have advised arbitral institutions on effective practices and rule revisions. What would you say is key to being a good case manager?
I think foremost being responsive to parties and arbitrators. So I think good case managers will make it known early on that they're available and ready to help. I think good case managers respond to questions promptly. I think maybe secondly, good case managers are obviously detail-oriented and they're accurate in the advice that they give, which may mean asking other case managers or center directors for advice. And maybe a third point is I think that consistency is important, consistency in service. So I think offering the same advice and the same level of service as much as possible across staff is important. And I think that speaks to the importance of establishing good standard practices and to internalizing experiences and possibly changing standard practices to reflect experience.
Excellent points. Thank you.
And now, James, you act as arbitrator. How did you get your first appointment? And what do you think makes an arbitrator a good one?
Hana, you'll be very impressed. My first appointment was as a presiding arbitrator on a panel of 3.
Wow.
That was while I was in law school. It was a pilot project. It was a pilot project in Orleans Parish in New Orleans, where they were looking to relieve the courts of some of the backlog. And so I had a tiny dispute between 2 neighbors over a driveway. They each accused each other of not respecting the half of the driveway that belonged to each of them. Part of the evidence that we heard in the case was photographs of ducks because one neighbor accused the other of scaring the ducks by parking too close to them. But anyway, this was a real case. We had real deliberations, some real disagreements about the outcome, and an award was ultimately rendered. More to your point, I think international cases, my first cases were institutional appointments as sole arbitrator on very low quantum cases. I've had a couple of cases that have been referred, but up until this point, most of the arbitrations that I've gotten have been from Asian institutions in particular. I hope one day to have cases outside of Asia, but for now, that's been the main center of my activity.
That's so great to hear. And I'm so impressed that you had a case when you were still in law school. It's such a great story.
Excellent.
Yeah, and for the qualities of a good arbitrator, you know, I think I've had the opportunity to work with quite a few as a tribunal secretary, and I think there's some obvious constants like taking the time to read documents and having an open mind and exercising good judgment. One arbitrator I worked with was William Park of Boston University, and he's written about a shoe store with a proactive approach to customer complaints. They have a sign on the door that says, fast service, low price, high quality, pick any 2. And that's funny because it reveals the tension between efficiency and quality. I think the arbitrators that I admire most are focused on quality, but they also have a sense of scale. So in particular, I admire arbitrators who are not afraid to tell parties what they need from them to decide cases and to do that early in the proceedings if possible. I think that can remove some of the distance between fast service and high quality.
So before moving to Japan and becoming a law professor, you worked at ICSID? ICSID. Mm-hmm. How
right.
was this experience like? And could you also please tell us, what do you think makes a tribunal secretary a good one?
I think ICSID is a great institution, and it was a fantastic place to work. It's very service oriented. The center regularly seeks to accommodate its member states and respond to their needs. A good example of that is that there is a huge rule revision process going on right now, and it's been going on since 2016. The center has regular meetings with states and civil society. There have been 4 working papers, hundreds of pages. It's a very thorough, deliberative process. So I think it's a great institution with a real orientation towards service. In terms of the secretaries, the nature of the work is that the secretaries work very closely with tribunals. So they advise tribunals about rules and procedures, they attend hearings and deliberations, and they draft portions of orders and also of awards. I think good secretaries often have the same qualities as good arbitrators. They're well organized, they're responsive, they're calm when tensions are high. And I would add to that that good secretaries understand their limits, that they're careful not to do work that arbitrators should be doing.
Thank you.
And now, James, what is so far the greatest achievement of your career?
I'd like to emphasize the so far part, and I hope that you'll ask me back about today, so I hopefully have something interesting to say at that point, hopefully. What I can say is that the projects that I enjoy most are those that have potential of high impact and that have an influence on practice. So as I think you mentioned before, I've worked on some rules revisions projects. I've really enjoyed those. I just finished an empirical study on online mediation that has some insights about how mediating online is changing mediation practice. I'm organizing an FDI mediation moot, which will take place for the first time next year in Japan. So with all those projects, I think the thing they have in common is that they reach beyond individual cases and have the potential to impact practice. I hope that doesn't sound pompous, but anyway, those are the kind of projects that I like.
No, it's great, and congratulations on organizing this FDI mediation route. I think it's amazing.
Not done yet, but it's on the way.
What do you love the most about living and working in Japan?
Japan is a very has a very interesting culture, very rich culture. It's very different from my own. So I think that makes living here interesting and unpredictable. I also like the importance of community and looking out for each other. So I was surprised when I first moved here to see very young children, maybe 6 or 7 years old, walking to school alone or on trains alone. And it was explained to me that there's an expectation that communities will take care of their own and their children. Professionally, it's really exciting. It's the 3rd largest economy in the world. Tokyo is the most populous city on the globe by most measures. It's in the Asia Pacific region, which is of course a very dynamic region. And international arbitration and international dispute resolution are really getting a lot of attention in Japan these days. There have been new institutions created, the Japan International Dispute Resolution Center, the Japan International Mediation Center, the Japan Institute for International Arbitration Research and Training. Those have all been created very recently. Last year, the laws that govern foreign lawyers practicing arbitration in Japan were modernized. There have been recent promotions of foreign lawyers as arbitration partners in elite Japanese law firms. The arbitration law is being revised for the first time since 2003. So all of that creates kind of an exciting atmosphere and one that doesn't exist in other centers where arbitration is more settled. And I also think that the kind of contributions that you can make in international dispute resolution here can have potentially a bigger and more lasting impact than in places where arbitration is more settled.
Oh, thank you for your insight.
Yeah, that's great to hear. So you have, and you just mentioned this with the FDI mediation moot, you've acted as arbitrator and judge at several student competitions, including the VIS moot, VIS pre-moot, the FDI moot, the ICSID mediation competition, and I remember seeing you there in Hong Kong. Could you please share with us your favorite part about participating as arbitrator or judge in those competitions, and even organizing competitions, because you just mentioned it?
Yeah, the organizing, the judgment's out on the part that I like the most. I think maybe I'm looking at the other side of that coin, but no, I'm kidding. But no, I like the competitive spirit that characterizes competitions. It's exciting. I like seeing the hard work of students pay off when they make oral arguments, and I really like the international dynamics with students from around the world, meeting and making friendships and making connections that may actually have a huge impact on their lives and their chosen professions. And I also like meeting other arbitrators and arbitration practitioners. I think much of what we did in the past in arbitration in person can be done online. But one thing that I think is hard to replicate so far has been connections and social events that crop up around things like moots and other events.
Very true, very true. We'll all miss it.
So James, we have a fun bonus question for you. And you mentioned, you mentioned earlier about your students really liking the criminal side of things. So I'm curious how you're going to answer this. How big are you on Netflix? Because we need to know, are you a How to Get Away with Murder fan or The Good Wife?
Yeah. And then
he's nodding his head. What? No Netflix?
I have not seen it. I have not seen. No, I don't. I'm so sorry. It's a great disappointment. I think that the interview was going pretty well up until that point. No, I'm sorry. I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it.
No legal shows.
No legal shows.
No, I don't. Yeah, I don't. Advise me. I mean, I should know.
I don't know. I thought every student, like in US schools, would actually watch legal shows because it's so big in the US.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Yeah.
So you don't watch a lot of TV, I take it.
I have some work to do. No, I don't. I waste time in all sorts of other ways, but I don't watch that much TV. It's true.
It's okay. So what do you do for fun?
Well, around here, I do a lot of Japanese type things. So I love to go to temples. I love to go to shrines. There are mountains all around Kyoto where I live. So I like to go into the mountains. And I've recently been going to, there's this thing called a kisaten in Japan. And they're just kind of traditional coffee houses. They're very retro. They're almost like French bistros. So I've been discovering these kisaten around Kyoto.
Sounds lovely. I've never been to Japan, so I'm definitely looking forward.
You should. Maybe this FDI mediation moot will be a good opportunity for you to come to Japan.
Okay, we gotta go. We gotta work on that. We gotta work on that.
Is it going to be in Kyoto? Is it going to be in Tokyo? You don't know?
Sorry?
Is it it's going to be in Kyoto, Tokyo?
It's going to be in Kyoto at Doshisha University, which is right by the Imperial Palace in Kyoto. I'm actually joining you from Doshisha tonight. So that's where it will be. Beautiful campus. It's a great event. It's co-sponsored with the FDI arbitration moot. So this is the first time we'll actually be using the problem from the arbitration moot for the mediation moot. So it should be exciting.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Okay, we have to go. And obviously, you're welcome to come visit us in the BVI.
Of course.
Hopefully soon.
I would love that. You live in paradise. I watched the video tour of your office, and you can see it's incredible. Very, very jealous.
You'll
And
come see it yourself.
Yeah, I like what you two are doing. I like the energy. It's a lot of fun. It's a great resource too, of course, but I like your approach.
Thank you.
Thank
We
you so much.
appreciate it. So James Claxton, it's been a pleasure to talk with you and get some wonderful insight. I've certainly learned a lot today about arbitration, and I greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Hey,
Thank you,
been my pleasure.
James.
Thank you so much. I hope to see you again soon.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, James, again, and it was so great to be able to catch up. For more Arbitration Life, please be sure to hit the subscribe button and to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn at Arbitration Life.